He says he was injured, but he just wants an apology from the U.S. Coast Guard, and he's speaking out as a warning to other Canadians.
I want the people to know and to beware. Stay away from the border, even if it's 500, 600 feet away from there.
A lot of you sent me this story, and for a good reason. This isn't just another border incident. It's a clear sign that things have changed, even on the waterways. When you have CBP and now even the US Coast Guard operating with a zero-tolerance mode, you know something's off. It's like they're just looking for a fight. I do feel for this guy in the report. What he went through isn't right. But I'll save my full thoughts until after we go through the details. Before we start, again another photo from my mom. Today's photo's from Horseshoe Bay Ferry Terminal in West Vancouver. I might need to make a day trip to Victoria or Nanaimo. All right, let's get into the report.
I'm never going to be the same. You see, it comes and goes. I can't stop it.
Edouard Lallemand is still very emotional when he talks about what happened on Sunday evening. Lallemand was out fishing near Venise en Quebec. The water connects to Lake Champlain in the U.S. But Lallemand says he knows for certain he was on the Canadian side.
I'm seeing them. They're coming towards me. And I know in my heart, I'm in Canada. I said, you can't do nothing to me.
The boat that was approaching, he says, was the U.S. Coast Guard. They asked him to turn off his engine. He complied. They told him he was in U.S. territory.
No, I'm very sorry. I'm in Canada. And I said, you know, I'm polite enough to talk to you guys, but you cannot arrest me. You can't come across the border and pick me up. They did.
Lallemand said,
There's one part of this I really need to speak on. I grew up on the water. Fishing has always been part of my life, especially on Vancouver Island. A few years ago, my family and I went on a fishing trip together. It had been nearly 30 years since we last did it together as a family. This time, we hired a charter out of Sydney on the island. It was a great trip with my parents, but there was one thing the fishing guy was crystal clear about. We're not going east of Sydney Island. That was the rule. That part way out there, that was the no-go zone. Why? Because once you're out on the water, the Canada-US border isn't always obvious. Unless you're using a GPS, it can turn into a guessing game. Depending on which side you're on, it's your word against theirs. That's how tight the rules are now. And since we're on the topic of my fishing trip, here's a little guy that was waiting for food while we were at the dock.
He started his engine and tried to make his way further into Canada, but he says the Coast Guard followed and tried pushing him into the U.S. Eventually, his boat capsized. Lallemand was in the water and says he was drowning.
You know what they're doing? They're tying to my boat to their boat. They're not even taking care of me. Not at all. I'm the one that told them. The third time I went down, coming out with water in my mouth, spitting it out, I said, throw me a buoy.
He says he was handcuffed on the U.S. Coast Guard boat and eventually turned over to Border Patrol. He was detained and placed in a holding cell without a proper explanation, he says.
I said, are you arresting me? No, sir, you're detained. I said, detained for what? I said, you aggressed me. I didn't do nothing to you guys. I didn't even hit you guys.
In a statement to CTV News, the U.S. Coast Guard says the operator was informed that he was in U.S. Customs waters. While the Coast Guard's 29-foot response boat was alongside the vessel, the operator put the vessel in motion and ignored commands to maintain course and speed for boarding purposes. The vessel then made an abrupt turn and struck the port bow of the Coast Guard. They go on to say that Lallemand's boat capsized and he ended up in the water.
Now, I know some of you might not agree with me on this, but I don't think this gentleman helped his case by trying to flee back to Canada. If it were me, I would have stayed put, checked my GPS, and verified my coordinates just to confirm whether I was on the Canadian waters or US waters. If it turns out I was in the US, I'd own it, apologize for drifting over the line. Now, sure, I'd probably be questioned for hours, but once you're already in contact with the border agents, trying to leave mid-conversation doesn't really help your situation. Now, that's just my take, just what I would have done.
Coast Guard promptly recovered him. He was eventually transferred to U.S. Border Patrol custody, and the Coast Guard says the actions of the operator of the Canadian vessel are currently under investigation.
We treat our pets
Better
than
than
they
that.
treated him.
After hours in a cell, Lallemand was released.
When I saw him coming from the Canadian Customs, and he was flabbergasted. I mean, I've never seen him like that. We've been together for a very long time. He's like a beaten man.
He says he was injured, but he just wants an apology from the U.S. Coast Guard, and he's speaking out as a warning to other Canadians.
I want the people to know and to beware. Stay away from the border, even if it's 500, 600 feet away from there.
Matt Grillo, CTV News, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu.
I really feel for this guy. No one deserves to go through something like that. But my advice? You need more than 500 or 600 feet from the border. During my last fishing trip with my family, we stayed at least 2 kilometers away, and that was when Biden was in the office. Now, I'm not putting the blame on this guy, because we all know how questionable US law enforcement is these days, so he could have legitimately been in Canada. But back in the day, there was a sense of trust. If you drifted too close, someone from the Coast Guard might have just waved you off or give you a bit of a warning, or calmly said, hey, you know you're getting close to the line, right? But those days are over. That neighborly friendship that we had with the border, gone. And it means that we have to change our habits too. Personally, I would not leave anything to chance. Not on land and definitely not on water. Give yourself a wider buffer. Avoid the situation altogether. I hope this guy recovers from his trauma. But if he's expecting an apology from the US Coast Guard, I'm not sure if he's actually going to get it. Now before I wrap it up, here's a quick shot of that curious seal again, who was hanging around while we were filleting the fish, just patiently waiting for scraps. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe to help spread this message. And if you're still here, check out the other videos that are showing on your screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.